What's happening, folks? Back with the third and final movement of Mozart, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart's 15th Piano Concerto, as performed by Rudolf Serkin on piano, conducted by Claudio Abbado, and performed by the London Symphony Orchestra. I did want to mention, I forgot at the end of the second movement in my outro to discuss the relative influence and sonics of the piano to the orchestra, or the piano and the orchestra, so I felt like I had to come back and do this third movement here in this batch. But yeah, in the second movement, I feel like the piano was perhaps slightly more central / prominent compared to some other piano concerto movements, and even specifically with Mozart, which is further to say, in some piano concertos, the piano comes in, it leads the melody and so on, but there will be entire sections where the orchestra runs the show and provides a fuller texture, and then the piano comes back, and then obviously in some points they're working in tandem. But the previous movement, the Larghetto, felt very piano-driven, and it was like the orchestra was there just sort of supporting and giving some string and woodwind texture, but by and large it felt a more piano-driven movement than sometimes you get in piano concerto movements. In any case, the third movement here is an Allegro, meaning it is fast and lively, it is bright, and in that regard, and not having heard this concerto before, I don't quite know what to expect, but certainly it sounds like it's going to be a contrast to the second movement. And fair to say, in symphonies and concertos, oftentimes you get a slow middle movement, whether it's a largo, a larghetto, or indeed like an adagio, and then it'll come back with an allegro or a vivace or something like that. So the structuring of the larger piece feels pretty standard, not in a bad way, just that does seem to be a common method of composition. In any case, let's listen to it. This is Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, the third movement to his 15th Piano Concerto in B flat, K450, as performed by Rudolf Serkin on the piano, the London Symphony Orchestra, and conducted by Claudio Abbado. Oh, I've heard this. I've heard this. A master at work. And okay, so much to say. I'm going to try to be focused here. First of all, the bookending and the passing conversation with and embellishment of that main theme in this third movement is brilliant, and I love the way, again, the bookending of the movement, the way it starts and ends with that melodic flourish, even though that melody is pervasive, and it's passed from the piano itself to the woodwinds. The strings are supporting it. At times they're all playing it either together or variations of it as it goes from section to section. There is a light brightness to the movement. And yes, I'm in a few different minds. I feel like there's one of three possibilities here. One, the reason this immediately sounded familiar to me is A, it's part of the Amadeus soundtrack, and in fact, I feel like I could check that. B, it's in some, greatest hits or some compilation CD I have of Mozart. Or three, it's the motifs of the first movement brought back and flourished here in the third and final movement, the Allegro. So, yeah, I feel like maybe there's a bit of that third possibility, that some of what we hear here was put down or first articulated in the opening movement, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is in the Amadeus soundtrack, because it feels like this is maybe a piece, like I'm thinking of the scene when he's, going to try on wigs. I'll have to find out, because again, I actually do have the Amadeus soundtrack. I gotta remember what it might be. God, where is that? I don't see it under the A's. I don't see it under Mozart, but I know I reacted to... Well, I feel like that should be part of my collection here, and I can't tell you why it's not. How confusing. Well, I guess... Hold on, that might not be the end of the story here. Okay. Yeah, I can go to Discogs. No, it does not look like it's part of the Amadeus soundtrack. Yeah, there's a concerto for two pianos in there. Piano concerto in E flat, K482. Yeah, I don't think it's in here. So, yes, I guess it's not used in Amadeus, which again leaves open two possibilities, maybe both of them being true. That I may have heard this movement in a great piano pieces, or Mozart's classic works or something like that, like a compilation, and or maybe it's the motifs of the first movement in particular re-articulated here, and thus it has that sort of immediate familiarity. Like sometimes you'll hear a song and there's a melodic motif and you're hearing it for the first time, and then they do variants of it, and by the end of the song it feels familiar already, as does a car horn, but it's because you actually just heard it. So yeah, I wonder what the reality is of that. Either way, the moment it started, I was like, oh, like this feels very familiar. So yeah, on some level, I imagine it might be a combination thereof. I may have heard this before, but probably also it's the artistry of the use of certain themes throughout all of the movements. In any case, I think it's a lovely finish. There's a light playfulness to it. I do enjoy, again, the way that main theme is brought forth in a number of different variants and passed from different sections of the orchestra back to the piano and so on. There's some forte playing, some, like heavier chords, but also some trills and some crescendos where the piano shoots up and has a lightness to the playing. So yeah, just a really wonderfully composed piece by the one and only Mozart. I do enjoy Mr. Rudolf, is it Serkin? It's Serkin or Surkoff? I'm suddenly second guessing myself. I think it is Serkin, right? Let's just check to make sure. Yes, Serkin. And I do enjoy the conducting as well, because again, I feel like the interplay between the piano and the orchestra was very, like the timing and the levels and the integration was fantastic. So again, obviously a lot of that credit goes to Mozart himself, but I do think Claudio Abbado and the London Symphony Orchestra played it well. So yes, just a wonderful piano concerto. I have a number of other piano concertos. I mean, even this CD, there's an additional one that is in the playlist. So yeah, I have more piano concertos and more symphonies from Mozart to go through, as well as more like incidental or pieces outside those two major forms. And yes, as I said, we've got one more classical reaction that I'm going to do before Classical Days 2026, and that is a singular piece. It's like a, single movement piece that has been suggested by Izzy World. And then after that, as I said, in maybe a couple weeks or so, we'll go through a week, 5 to 7 days. I'm not sure exactly how long it'll be, but of classical reactions where we do full sonatas, concertos, vocal pieces from operas, symphonies, at least a couple I have in mind, and more. So let me know what you think, and I will see you next time. Peace.